So good afternoon. My name is Mark Landry. I'm the CSO for Amarok, and I'm the chairman of the CSO Center board through ASIS. So future-proofing security isn't about chasing new technology or saying yes to the most frictionless solution in the room. It's about making disciplined decisions that preserve accuracy, reliability, operational integrity, and trust over time. What makes this conversation valuable is the range of perspectives that we have on the stage. We have leaders who've designed and operated security programs for complex security real estate portfolios, veterans of intelligence and physical security programs, experts in open platform and cloud-delivered technologies, and leaders from the access control industry who work with organizations. Together, we'll explore the questions every security executive eventually faces when your security business leadership pushes for convenience. What do you do? How do you decide what to simplify and what to protect? And where is the line that should be drawn? So let's dive into this important conversation. So Erin, you were that real estate reference that I mentioned. So what say you on this topic?
Absolutely, thank you. I oversee a national portfolio of Class A commercial office buildings. So I have the pleasure and the challenge of making sure that the security profile of that building is robust enough for our high security tenants and realistic enough for our tenants that have a lower security posture. All while making sure the tenants and guests that come into the building have a seamless, hospitality-forward experience getting where they need to go, and then keeping the bad actors out. Simple, right? When we're talking about privacy, it's, from the commercial real estate perspective, especially in multi-tenant, we deal quite a bit with what the tenants are willing to share with us. So talking about privacy versus security, I can't staff up the security of the building without knowing that there's been a threat made to your company, that you're having employee problems, that your layoffs are coming up, that you haven't kept your access control system up to date. Some companies don't want to share this with us because of privacy information, but if you're not sharing it with the building landlord, you're, in essence, reducing the security for the entire building by that information not being shared. And then on the technology front, we have tenants that come in wanting to use less than optimal security technology on the base building systems and want us to lower the level of security so that they can get their employees in easier. Typically, we get to say no to things like this, but as many of you may be aware, we're still hoping people are going to come back to the office, and commercial real estate's in a bit of a slump right now. I'm seeing tenants coming in requesting things in leases that could affect the security of the building. In the past, I've been able to put my foot down to that, but I'm worried we're in a place now where tenants may be requesting things that we would have said no to in the past, and we have to concede on this time. I think there's some positives and negatives here, and I think a lot of people in this audience may be able to impact that when their companies are working with real estate companies. So hoping to talk a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Chuck, with your leadership and experience, how do strong CSOs decide when convenience is a smart business and when it's a dangerous compromise? And what separates experience-driven judgment from repeating old habits, Chuck?
Yeah, this is a bit subjective, right? A lot of CSOs in the room. So I'm going to give you a perspective of the last 41 years of being in this business. Now look, convenience is smart business, but only if it removes the unnecessary friction, right, that goes with that. But it cannot weaken identity, visibility, accountability, or the ability to respond to it in whatever manner that you happen to address it in your company. Look, it becomes a really dangerous compromise that when we make something easier, we can no longer really we can't do this without answering 4 basic questions. 1, who did it? Who authorized it? What actually happened, which could come out of an Apollo root cause to understand what really did happen. And can we prove it ex post facto? You're going to be held accountable to that. Now look, experience, if you've been a CSO or been in physical security or a security director or a security manager, you recognize all this experience and you recognize all these patterns. So, but the problem is when systems fail is where people create the workarounds or the temporary exceptions, right, that always inevitably happen. And these exceptions actually become permanent vulnerabilities, right? We've all kind of seen that. But experience becomes really a blind spot when we confuse familiarity with fitness, which is to say, look, if you keep using the same vendor, it worked great in your last organization, but it doesn't work in this organization by virtue of culture, by virtue of work environment, risk environment, or the operating reality, of your world. Look, if you're a strong CSOs, you're going to use those experiences as proof or evidence, right? But not as the final answer. You've been there, done that. It worked, right? So you got to test our assumptions, challenge familiar vendors, and make sure today's decision is defensible for today's organization. So the rule is really simple. Convenience can remove unnecessary friction, but in the end, and as you all know, it cannot remove accountability.
Awesome. Bob, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm coming at this from a pretty specific place, right, of access control. I think that in reality, even a valid credential isn't necessarily safe, right? You don't know who actually has that credential in their hand. I think with leveraging identity layers within an access platform can help offset some of those concerns, right? You're not necessarily, you're not validating a credential anymore, you're verifying an actual user. You know who's in the building at what time. We can also automate some processes where you provide the user, of an employee or user of the system, some autonomy to be able to set their own appointments with visitors and automate that visitor flow. So I don't know that there's necessarily a real trade-off in my mind. I mean, obviously there is, right, in some cases. But I think today's environment, you can do both, whereas previously you couldn't. I think even a valid credential, it's simply a token, right? It's a proxy of a person. So I think that underlying identity layer can really help sort some of that out. You empower the users, reducing the need for some of those workarounds. You can eliminate some, tailgating, doors propped open, credential sharing, those types of things, because you give people the ability to kind of move around freely, but you have the underlying data to know exactly what's happening in that building or that facility.
Sure. Excellent. Maureen, future-proofing gets said a lot and defined rarely. From an architecture perspective, what keeps a system defensible, not just now, but 5 years from now?
Well, I think the conversation has changed so much with modern architectures and emerging technologies. Previously, there were conversations around what is the total cost of ownership, what is my ROI if I spend money on this hardware, on this infrastructure that we've used for a long time. But today the conversation is changing, and Aaron made me think a lot about the commercial real estate market as we were preparing for this conversation, because I've had customers that I've worked with who've said that moving into modern architecture has truly felt like a lifestyle change for them in their roles. So when I think about what's going to help with this investment, keeping it safe, keeping it secure 5 years from now, it's how the strategic decisions are being made today. So that comes with flexibility. If you're talking architecture, no longer do you need complex hardware infrastructure in all locations. Sometimes you do have to supersize, as Bart was saying, and have that complex deployment at the head end. but maybe at multi-site locations, at off-site locations, where you don't have the same type of IT resources managing infrastructure, you don't have the same complexity needs, you can have a hybrid infrastructure, or you can maybe have an infrastructure that is completely serverless, because companies today might not be building space that has added rooms for servers or the maintenance to manage those. So I think having considerations now in flexibility, so you can have cloud, hybrid, and serverless options, that's a very big part about thinking of your 5-year strategic investment. Then also getting into openness. I think that with decision intelligence or visual intelligence, as people are using that term today, there are ecosystems that are being built. There are platforms that are being built. So users that have different needs, they might be in the same building, but they have different needs. They have different personas using the system. So being able to have a solution that is based on open architecture to use the right partners, the right technologies that are going to better the operational value and long-term success of what you're using, having that openness is very important, especially when cloud, AI, analytics, identity, so much is coming into play now. It's not a matter of being proprietary in a closed system. What is going to work best for your needs? And then I also think third, the continuous evolution that comes with modern architectures, modern technologies. If somebody is moving into a SaaS or a cloud-delivered technology environment, there are going to be continuous feature releases going on there. There are going to be continuous updates to the security systems, to the cybersecurity of your system, where maybe you don't need the IT resources to be doing the Windows patches and the updates any longer. The modern architectures are going to be allowing technology to have the latest and greatest at all times. So maybe you're spending 5 years in your mind on what this investment is going to be, but if you're moving from a CapEx to an OpEx model, there's going to be much more than a financial buying plan that's bettering your system. It's going to allow you this continuous use of having the latest and greatest and most secure features at the same time. And that's really what Fidelity means to me. It's being able to have a system that is going to spend your money and your investments wisely with what you have already that you can grow into and phase in as more budgets become available and more people within your organization are using the system in different ways, and they're also contributing to the budgets.
Awesome. So we got about 8 minutes left, and I was thinking, that famous Jim Valvano, when it's like, hey, they're flashing the red light at me, but who cares kind of thing, but I don't want to make Mike Gips upset. And 2, I don't want to get the bell. And 3, I know that this is the final piece before lunch, so we'll kind of keep it to about 7 minutes. But some open conversation, some crosstalk. First question I have for the panel: when the C-suite does push towards frictionless solutions, what do you actually say to that C-suite? What's the line between being a good partner and giving up that fidelity?
Can I
get
start?
that pressure? Absolutely, Erin.
I think that there's a difference between cutting edge and bleeding edge technology. And I think that people that are not technology focused or have not used security technology that has not worked the way they expected are quick to jump to what they want or what they're seeing that's big and shiny. It's really important to have a test case and if you're going to be rolling out new technology, to be doing it with a pilot and a larger pilot before you're giving thousands of new employees new technology to use. Because I've seen that happen and I've seen it blow up and it causes quite a lot of issues.
But what happens if you're being bared down to say, hey, we need to roll this out now? Like you're getting some pretty heavy pressure from above you, from your
I think
C-suite.
then you put together an appropriate plan and roll it out in a way that it's going to be successful.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I'm gonna comment on that as soon as my microphone comes on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
All right.
Chuck,
So
I feel
the
like you don't need a microphone.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
But go ahead.
It's okay. It's when you run a ranch, you usually yell a lot. So when the C-suite wants it to be frictionless, right? Look, here's the bottom line. If nobody wants to own the exception, you can bet your ass the security will. I'm sure everybody understands that. In the end, it's going to fall back to you. So if that's what they want, then there's going to be that level of accountability.
Yeah. So, anyone else, or I have some other questions? No.
I think again, like I said, I think there is a balance, right? I think you can have a fairly frictionless environment and still have the necessary controls within reason, right? I mean, you don't want to open it up for everybody, for everything. But I think you can maintain that balance with the technology that exists today. It maybe didn't exist 3 or 4 years ago, but I think there's some changes that will aid in that moving forward.
I think that, from a practitioner's perspective, there's a lot of experience in this room. And I have found in my worlds, like any security parameter, any solution that's implemented just creates more creative people to sidestep that solution.
Absolutely.
So from the panelist perspective, how do we adapt and overcome? And if you lock it down too much, it just ends up being, creates more vulnerabilities through the sidestepping.
I couldn't agree more, right? I mean, I mentioned some of the things, credential sharing, doors propped open. Let's say you're an employee at a McDonald's and you know a delivery's coming in. They don't have access to it. You have other things to do. Prop a door open, let them come in the back door and put the buns on a shelf, right? In the modern architecture, you have the ability for that employee to send an invite through an email, and with a QR code. When they get there, they can self-enroll, right? You know exactly who's there doing what function, and it's pretty much pre-approved at that point. So you can, automating some of those processes gives the individual users the autonomy while protecting the overall system.
And maybe doing a gap assessment, right, to understand that every time you tighten down the screws, right, there's going to be workarounds. There's going to be exceptions. So as part of your process and that entire workflow is to capture and document those, because I'm sure as the sun's going to rise, it's going to happen. How many sidewalks or parks have you walked in where people cut through a path and now the path is permanent, right? Literally permanent. Some cities decide to pour cement and agree to that. Otherwise, it's going to happen. So do the assessment, capture it, and develop some technologies around it that are reasonable and prudent for the environment.
Yeah. All right. We got a couple more minutes. I'll ask one more open question, then we'll kind of wrap up. So is zero trust always the answer, or does operational reality sometimes demand something a little bit more nuanced and adaptability?
Karen? Got anything?
Pass.
Pass. We did talk about this, like, hey, if you don't
We
have
said
anything,
pass was okay.
Pass.
Look, a control that looks good maybe on a slide or PowerPoint presentation, but really fails during like an emergency or a critical situation. Well, look, it's just not mature security in the end, right? That's a fair statement.
Sure.
So that's my philosophy on that. Not going to hold water.
All right. So final thoughts. Let's go. All the way down. All four of you. In one sentence. What's the single thing on this particular topic that you want every CSO in the room to take away from this panel? Walk away from this.
From my perspective, if you are working in an office building, you have the ability to impact the security positively or negatively based on the information that you are providing to that building landlord or to that building security team. You also may be able to influence the security of the entire building based on your lease language. So I would ask that you use that power for good.
Okay.
Look, security leaders are not judged by how something went, right? On a good day, they're going to be judged on the bad day completely across. Unless what remains is, how you responded to it in terms of trusted, defensible, and operational in the end. I know you've experienced that,
yeah.
Right? So that's the truth.
Sure. Bob?
I think the organizations that'll be successful, or that will kind of define physical security moving forward, or over the next decade, are the ones that somewhat refuse to buy into the narrative that there's a trade-off between protection and experience of that user. Again, I think that, that underlying identity provides that functionality at this point, and no longer do you need to balance, safety and seamlessness as you navigate through a building.
Sure. Maureen, you got last word.
Last word. Well, I'm going to echo something similar to what Cassia said earlier about the vendor piece. I think that for all the security leaders in this room, it is incredibly critical to stay aligned with both your technology developers and your integrator partners. I realize you might have multiple technology providers and multiple integrator partners that you're working with, but the more you are aligned with them, especially if you're working with SaaS, when there are continuous developments being made, sometimes the users don't know what's come out. There might be something new in AI that's been released. There might be new capabilities, new security releases. They don't know about that. So having that ongoing customer experience, it can not only make sure that you're doing the most with your system, but that you might potentially be influencing the roadmap if you're talking about things that are not being done yet. So that three-way alignment between the partner and the end user and the reseller is very important.
Awesome. All right, well, let's turn it over back to our fearless leader, our moderator, Mike. No selfies for us, I guess, unless anyone wants a selfie, right? No one. No one says that. All right, lunch.